All right, welcome to Bet the Edge. I'm Jay Croucher here with Drew Dinsick and Vaughn Dalzell with Las Vegas, Nevada as his backdrop. We're going to talk all college football today. We're going to talk about odds to make the expanded 12-team college football playoff, odds to win the national championship, and then also the Heisman Trophy. I'm going to play very much the role of Mike Bibby on the 2011 Miami Heat. So that's washed Mike Bibby passing LeBron and D-Wade the ball here. So let's start off with make the college football playoff market, Vaughn. Your headline favorites, as per usual: Ohio State minus 750, Georgia minus 600, and then Oregon, Texas, and Notre Dame are next up. Is there anyone in this market who stands out to you?
Yeah, certainly you want to be looking for some plus money options here, but I'll be honest, there's a lot of them that I think you could probably get some better value on during the season. Obviously, the Ohio State, Georgia, Oregon's, those three teams I think are solidified and no matter what but you can't be playing them at the current minus 350 to minus 750 prices. So I'm going to say LSU at plus 125 is one of the teams that I'd like to get involved in. I'm keeping an eye on Florida State at plus 150, depending on how they come out in the week 1 of the season against Georgia Tech. Yellow Jackets have been a hot underdog matchup. We've seen that spread drop down. So maybe Florida State could be a play in my pocket, but I think LSU is a team that's got to feel like they could be the favorites in the SEC with their quarterback and all the players around him, receiver, running backs coming in from the transfer portal. They're going to be one of the best offenses in college football this year. So I really do like LSU in this market, and I'd have to give not really a shout out, but a diss to the big blue nation that we loved so much last year, Drew. Michigan is going to be a fade for me this year, man. At that current minus 140 price, I would not want to get involved with that. It would have to be something like 2-1 for me to get involved. I think with all the scandals going on, there's going to be a lot hindering this team and their day-to-day preparation for these games. But when you look at their schedule, I mean, they got to beat Texas, Oregon, and Ohio State just to go over their win schedule. That's not happening. So Michigan will not be making the postseason.
Okay. Hey, I've been sitting on my Michigan pile of money that you made me last year and just waiting for what's the right time to put that back into market. And it's going to be wild if that's going to be on a team other than Michigan, but I'm ready to do it. Jim Harbaugh obviously moved on. No JJ McCarthy to captain the ship anymore. So perfectly fine being against Big Blue. I look at the current format. We're going to get 12 teams in the mix here. My suspicion is that they're not going to necessarily tack into the predictable for the bottom of this 12 teams, right? They're going to get some wild cards in the mix. That's the whole reason of expanding, is they're going to want to give some opportunities to some surprise programs, I think, as like the 11th and 12th seeds. And there are some huge prices on some kind of non-traditional powerhouses who may have relatively easy schedules compared to what the Big Ten and the SEC are going to be looking at this year. Can you kind of key on anyone that you think might shine outside the bright lights of the two big conferences here that could steal a spot? Like I'm eyeballing a couple teams that I'm hoping that you're just going to kind of lead me down the road here so we can roll that Michigan money into this year's success.
I feel like you want me to say Liberty. Do you want me to say Liberty, Drew?
I'm curious if you think they're for real. I mean, like, this price looks credible to me. I don't know, 375, and it's a very, very soft path for them, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little bit of a mind reader in my spare time. It must be the Vegas energies helping me out here. But yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say that Liberty's a terrible bet at plus 375. I mean, I don't know if they're going to be a team that I think will continually get better. They might have, plateaued last year. I was going to say you mentioned outside the big conferences, because in the big conferences, I would take a stab probably on a Tennessee or a Kansas State. They both got 2 new quarterbacks coming in. I love the potential for those 2 to be NFL quarterbacks, but also to be guys that are dark horse Heismans and put up very good seasons. That's Nico and Avery Johnson. Nico, I'm not going to try and say his last name. I should get Thor off camera to help me out with that. But I think those 2 teams are the best bets. But I wouldn't talk you off of Liberty, Drew. I would rather take a stab on probably an NC State at 5-1, as that team has a really good defense. I think going to be better, have potential to contend in an ACC that is kind of up in the air, honestly.
Vaughn, as someone who doesn't really have an opinion on it or is not informed enough to have an opinion on it at this stage, With what happened to Florida State at the end of last year, who they're plus 150 to make the playoff, is there any element with the new structure? Will there be maneuverability to right the wrong of last year, if you want to view it as that, missing out after being undefeated? Does that come into play at all? Or do you think this is just going to be very much a merit-based system as much as possible?
Yeah, I'm not going to be really quick to back Florida State to be a national title champion or, a top 4 team throughout the year like they were last season. They really, like you said, I mean, they lost out on their opportunity last year with the quarterback issues, but their schedule isn't terrible, but it's also not great for a team to contend and win 10, 11, 12 games. Like they're going they have a home game against Clemson after SMU, who will probably be a sleeper in that conference, like to compete in their new conference. But after Clemson, they go to Duke, then to Miami, come home against North Carolina, then to Notre Dame. That stretch right there is going to prove a lot of what Florida State's going to be built about. But I'm curious to see the few positions that did have turnover. I mean, let's not forget they had a 6'7" receiver in Johnny Davis last year. Like that's going to do you some damage in Division I no matter what. In the quarterback position this year, you look at them, they got DJU now. And DJU is just a fifth-year senior using that COVID year. And I'm not sure if he's a guy that is ever going to win the big game, to be honest with you. Not a knock on him, but he was moved out of Clemson by a younger quarterback, Cade Klubnik, who has not panned out that well either for Clemson. So I'm not going to rush to the window on Florida State at all. I'm not going to sit here and say this is going to be a 7 or 8 win team. They should win in the neighborhood of 9 to 10 wins, in my opinion. But anyone led by DJU, I'm not going to be quick to go to the window, to be honest.
Okay, I got one more to make the playoffs question for you. I'm looking at this Utah Utes team.
Oh God!
This is the team that succeeded in spite of not having Cam Rising last year. They have a coach that pretty clearly knows what he's doing, and they have the home field advantage, which is playing at altitude. Is the bet on in the 2-1 range a fair bet for Utah as they find themselves in a pretty advantageous spot in the Big 12 now as maybe the best team in the Big 12?
Oh, I don't think anyone that's a newcomer can be put as the best team, not even the Oregon Ducks. So I'm going to say halt the horses on the Utes being the best team there. They got to prove themselves. But, I mean, the defense, we were on them a lot last year, Drew. I mean, we did love the Utah Utes, and I think this defense will be one of the best units in the Big 12, which, I mean, might not be saying much. That might be why you think they're the best team in the Big 12, because the Big 12 obviously lacks defense outside of a few teams. But, Cam Rising, he could be injured any given week. It could be a sack in week 1. It could be a sack in week 4. And without him, this is going to be the same situation we were in last year, Drew. So, I mean, getting a 2-1 price on Utah isn't the worst bet. There are far worse bets out there. Like taking Michigan is a worse bet to make the college football playoff than the Utah Utes. But, yeah, with only 2 teams that are ranked on your schedule all year, I mean, you got a nice road, Drew. So I'll give you that.
Okay. But hold your horses on the Utes, Drew. Take Vaughn's advice. All right, the RotoWorld Fantasy Football Draft Guide is now available exclusively through a new partnership with Matthew Berry's Fantasy Life. Get a Fantasy Life Plus subscription and receive the RotoWorld Draft Guide plus fantasy DFS and betting tools to help you dominate all season long. Use promo code ROTO10 for 10% off. Go to fantasylife.com/RotoWorld to learn more. All right. Odds to win the national championship, Vaughn. Georgia, the favorite, plus 300, followed by Ohio State, plus 325, Oregon, 7-1, Texas, 8-1, Alabama, 15-1, same price as Mississippi. Before we get into LSU, Penn State, Notre Dame. Does anyone jump out to you as a bet at current prices?
Yeah, so I've bet one team in this market, and that's going to be the Buckeyes of Ohio State. I'm finally backing in to Ryan Day, saying this will be the season where he finally makes a difference and makes his name at Ohio State. But I do love the schedule for the Buckeyes. Obviously, I mentioned Oregon previously in the last segment, and the Ducks are a team that's coming in with a star-studded offense, really good defense as well. But they're going to contend right away for the Big Ten championship. But I think Ohio State is the best team. They got a lot of guys in the transfer portal, but I'm really excited for a running back, Quinshon Judkins, which we'll talk a little bit about later. But he's a guy coming over from Ole Miss that has almost 30 touchdowns in 2 seasons. Now you pair him with Travion Henderson. You got a bunch of transfer portal receivers. But the most important thing, it's not that defense. It's the fact that they have a quarterback now. Last year, they were, playing multiple quarterbacks week 1, week 2, week 3 in spring training. They weren't sure who the star was going to be, but now Kansas State transfer Will Howard, a guy who has 28 starts or so under his belt, dual threat guy, gives them another aspect of the offense. I think Ohio State sets up well to win it all this year, to win the Big Ten, go over their 10F win totals. I like them to be undefeated. But you look at their schedule and it pans out pretty well too. I mean, the last 4 games of the season, Purdue, Northwestern, Indiana, and Michigan. Honestly, that's a cakewalk for them to get primed for the playoffs, and they get those tough games out the way with Iowa, Oregon, Nebraska, and Penn State over a 4-week stretch. So I think Ohio State is a good bet to win at least 11 games, and a good bet to win the national title at anything better than 3-1.
Well, you're in good company because Ohio State over 10.5 at one of the sharper places on earth, -191. So yeah, somebody's been into that market and had themselves a healthy amount of bets. But Ohio State Buckeyes. Hey, you know what? Your read on the Big Ten in general last year, and particularly that the way that was going to break was very solid. So happy to go back to war with you there. What is your general read on the SEC? As you know, most of the top of this board is kind of in that now new SEC space. You have Georgia, Texas, Alabama, Mississippi, and LSU all in your top 6 choices. Do you think that there is a chance that this is just like collateral damage? These guys just beat each other up throughout the balance of the season and just aren't right and ready for a playoff? Or is it just a matter of tale as old as time, SEC is overrated?
What I'm most curious to see is how this alignment in these new conferences does affect some of these teams that they do continue to beat each other up, because the Big Ten's getting tougher, SEC's getting tougher,
Sure.
the Big 12's getting tougher. There's going to be a situation where when these teams are now being asked to play 12 and 13 and 14 games before they even get to a championship, there's going to be more injuries. There's going to be more things to cap and more things to talk about in these games. So I do think it's a situation where we see potentially one of these top 6 teams play each other 3 times. This was something on VSiN that they asked me that's actually sparked my interest. But what's the chances we see Ohio State and Oregon play 3 times this season? Regular season, Big Ten championship, and then national championship or playoffs. And I said, that's a great question. But we could see that too in the SEC with a lot of these teams. Now, if you're making me pick one team to win the SEC or one team worth betting to win the championship, I would take a stab on LSU. I still think that offense is going to contend. I mean, week 1, I've been talking to everybody here. LSU team total over against USC week 1. Can't wait for it. But I think that offense under Garrett Nussmeier is going to be absolutely electric all season, and it's going to be up there with the Oregon Ducks and Ohio State Buckeyes offense. So I would take LSU out of the SEC, but not much confidence when it comes to the trio of them, Alabama, and Ole Miss, to be honest.
Okay. Well, now with the expanded format, which introduces, I think, a little bit more variance, whereas in previous years past, you'd have the projected SEC title winner is like plus 150 to win the national title at midseason, be it basically Georgia or Alabama. This year, Vaughn, just with the expanded format, is there any long shot, even longer than LSU, that is of interest?
Wow. Man, I don't know. I don't know if I would go that far on the Tennessee Vols yet. I want to see if we're believing it. I mean, I did like Nico a lot at the quarterback position. If they get back to that Josh Heupel offense that's scoring 50 points a game, then we're right at there. Tennessee and LSU on the same playing field, in my opinion. So maybe I would take a look at Tennessee. I'm going to say don't get too excited about the Notre Dame Irish. That last year I felt like was really one of their chances to really compete and be a national championship contender, and they missed out with that with Sam Hartman and an absolutely dominant defense. So I would say do not run to the window on a Notre Dame or Michigan or Florida State at 30-1. But Tennessee would probably be my favorite long shot. And maybe if Cam Rising plays the whole season, Drew, the Utah Utes at 40-1.
Yeah. I already let the cat out of the bag. Utah's a bet at 40-1. I mean, this is stupid. Like they're going to lock up a playoff spot, and that 40-1 is going to melt. Their schedule is so much softer than any of the SEC Big Ten contenders, and the home field advantage is for real up there. The coaching is for real up there. Like that's. I'm not saying that they're going to actually be in the Final Four. I'm not saying they're going to be in the national championship game, but the idea of 40-1 even being close to available come Thanksgiving, I think, is pretty absurd. And I think actually that's really the way you got to play this market now. because there are so many more seats at the table. Like I think keying on some teams that have more clear paths and just capitalizing on the fact that there's more certainty that they're going to be in the mix is really where you want to try to attack here and build out a portfolio. Like the idea of, beyond, if Ohio State is the class of the Big Ten, which by all accounts make a great case, sounds like they are, like that's one thing to kind of just bet that now, knowing that that's probably a realistic likely winner. But I think the other plan of attack really is taking some of these prices and putting them to work come December. And Utah is at the top of the list for me. 40-1 is absurd. Like this. Yeah.
I was gonna say this because we're looking for the Washington or TCU part 3, right? Like the 3.0 to these teams, who's going to make their run, and with the field, like you said, more open. And Utah returns a great O-line, the defense, quarterback, great schedule. So I can see that type of team making a run. I would say it would be one of the 3 teams we've been talking about: an LSU, a Tennessee, a Utah. One of those 3 teams that are going to have nothing but total talent at the running back, receiver, quarterback positions, and then also great defenses to hold them behind. So I like your thinking in general. It's hard to pinpoint which team is the one, because I would say Utah's offers much better value than the Missouris, Texas A&M's, the Clemson, Oklahoma.
For sure.
So
for sure.
I do like it.
If you're taking long shots in the SEC, like, God bless you. There is no breathing room at the bottom of that conference. There's a little bit of breathing room at the bottom of the Big Ten. There's plenty of breathing room in the Big 12 right now. There's some breathing room in the ACC. I honestly think the idea is pick some. There's going to be Big 12 representation in the Final 12. I promise you. There's going to be ACC representation in the Final 12. I promise you. If you can pick a couple of teams that I think are well positioned to make some space in those conferences, then I think that's really where the money's going to be made in this market.
Okay. This Thursday, we are hosting our annual Roto World Draft Marathon, including the unveiling of Matthew Berry's Ride or Die on Fantasy Football Happy Hour. That's right, 10 hours of non-stop draft prep beginning at 11 a.m. Eastern on August 22nd. Check out NBCSports.com/draft marathon for the full schedule.
As you all know by now, we've teamed up with BetMGM this season. We'll be using BetMGM lines to make all our picks, and we'll have special offers for our listeners each week. If you haven't signed up to BetMGM yet, use bonus code BETEDGE, and you'll get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how it works. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using bonus code BETEDGE. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game, and you'll receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your first bet loses. Just make sure you use bonus code BETEDGE when you sign up. See BetMGM.com for terms. 21 plus only. U.S. promotional offers not available in New York, Nevada, Ontario, or Puerto Rico. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Available in the U.S. Call 8778-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467369 in New York. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP in Arizona, 1-800-327-5050 in Massachusetts, 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa, 1-800-981-0023 in Puerto Rico. First bet offer for new customers only, subject to eligibility requirements. Rewards are non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire in 7 days in partnership with Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel. Don't forget, if you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code BETEDGE and get your $1,500 first bet offer today.
Okay, we are back with the Heisman Trophy winner market to close out. Saw a lot of violent swings last year. JJ McCarthy was favorite for a time. Bo Nix was favorite for a time. And then Jaden Daniels ran away with it in the end. Dylan Gabriel is the favorite at plus 700. Carson Beck plus 750. Then Quinn Ewers, my man Jalen Milroe. Now, my man last year. I'm not recommending him for a bet this year. Vaughn, who do you like in this market?
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend Milroe either, but he could have his best season yet. We'll see what happens. Alabama's definitely one of those wild card teams that absolutely could be a national title contender or absolute bust this year. So don't hate his price, but what I would say is I locked in a few guys. Will Howard at 14-1 was one guy, like I said. He is going to have all that confidence in the Ohio State staff. He's going to have plenty of rushing touchdowns to go with throwing touchdowns, and he's not really a turnover machine. Garrett Nussmeier at 20-1. He's a guy that's probably going to throw for 4,000 plus yards. The quarterback last year did the same thing. He has all the talent around him, and that's an offense that's going to be very dynamic this year. So at 20-1, I don't hate that price. And we go down the board. I'm not going to give a shout out to Cam Rising at 41 because that would make Drew too happy. But Quinshon Judkins, a guy at 80-1, along with his teammate Travion Henderson. I think Judkins is a guy who could have 20-plus touchdowns this year for Ohio State if they really want to let him be the bell cow. And if there was one guy to make his name made this season, it would be the guy that Drew also compared to Josh Allen last year, Drew Allar of Penn State. They have a cookie cutter of a schedule. Yeah, super easy. All right. We're talking sugar cookies. They could win 10, 11 games this year. If that's the case, Drew Allar will have a great season. So 35-1, I could see a lot of closing line value for him, but not my favorite bet out of the bunch.
Yeah, no, those are all interesting. And, you, again, like you're reading the mail here, like Cam Rising 40-1 doesn't check out. Utah's win total right now over 9.5 is -190, guys. Like the team's gonna win double-digit games. I don't know what to tell you. Like it's happening, it's coming. And Cam Rising, I know. I mean, like he looks 30. He's only like 26 though. So ultimately, like he's got the experience to navigate the season and do quite well. So I only have one bet so far in this market, and of course is Cam Rising. But I'm gonna do a little bit of digging on Neusmeyer for sure. I think that's a strong case, and then surely the Ohio State quarterback, if they're if Ohio State does what we think they're going to do, and like honestly, if the Big Ten is havable, which it might be for a team that's that talented, then that might ultimately just be, if they win that conference cleanly, then he's going to be right at the top of so many ballots. So can't really fight that argument. Do you think just in general that the needing to win to be in consideration, has that been divorced at all after what we saw with Daniels taking the prize last year in the face of other quarterbacks like the Bo Nixes of the world who were in conference championship games where Daniels was not?
Yeah, I think it was a situation where a lot of the quarterbacks last year that were in the running, they just lost all those big games to another guy that was also in the running. So it was like people kept continuing to leapfrog each other. And with the new conferences, we could see the same type of thing, Drew. So I would say, I wouldn't be too wrapped up in a national champion, that betting on that guy who could be the quarterback of that team. I think there could be someone putting up stellar numbers like a Nussmeier on a 10-win team that could win Heisman.
Okay. Well, Vaughn, no, you got a dash. Thanks very much for joining us, mate. Everyone can follow Vaughn at VMoneySports on Twitter. Enjoy Las Vegas, Vaughn, and thanks for hopping on.
Appreciate it. See you later. Enjoy your day.
Cool. Last thing I'll say on the Heisman, Drew, Jalen Milroe. I watched a lot of Jalen Milroe last year. I actually had a big bet on Alabama to win the SEC, which they did. Had a big bet on Alabama to win the national championship, which they did not. Jalen Milroe is not going to win the Heisman unless he gets a lot better at football. And I say that very eternally grateful that he was able to pull out that win over Georgia as a 6.5-point dog in the SEC title game. He makes a lot of mistakes, and he plays very loose with the football. And I didn't enjoy the experience, the full Jalen Milroe experience. He had his moments, but he fumbled the ball with the SEC title game on the line, and then the ball just bounced back to him. If that ball, and it's just basically just running out the clock at the end, if that ball had squirted away from him and Georgia came down to score, it would have been maybe my most painful ever loss, honestly, because just to fumble away the game, just it should have been a completely meaningless play. And it was one play, but I thought it kind of epitomized the Milroe experience. So just divorce, I'm not deep enough in the weeds to have a strong opinion about how Alabama are going to do this year or to be able to price Milroe to win the Heisman right now. Just know from what I've seen of watching the guy play football, I don't think he can win the Heisman Trophy.
He's got Kalen DeBoer going for him.
Yeah.
But Caleb DeBoer doesn't have his he doesn't have Grubhub coordinating this year because Grubhub is now in Seattle. So it's going to be interesting if Alabama can kind of continue to be kind of the class program in the absence of Saban. I didn't see much in Saban at the end of that tenure that really suggested he was the reason for the success outside of the recruiting. So fascinated to see what happens with Texas, what happens with Alabama, and just in general, man, the SEC just looks like just a nightmare, right? Like same price for Texas A&M and Utah to win the national title this year. Utah's win total over 9.5, minus 190. Texas A&M's pick them at 8.5. Like it's not going to be especially pleasant playing in that conference this year because there's just no days off.
Yep, indeed. And look, Milroe could get better, I guess. And don't know enough about the schedule and the sequencing and all of that. But yeah, I would just be pretty surprised based on what I saw last year if he's going to win the Heisman Trophy. But I guess strange things have happened and he's the third favorite and got to defer to the market a little bit, even if it's probably not the most deferrable market, given it's probably not the most liquid in the world as we record in mid-August. All right, we are done for today. Don't forget to check out NBCSports.com for more information to help you with your wagers. Thanks to those watching on the NBC Sports YouTube channel. And if you're listening to us in podcast form, don't forget to rate and subscribe. Also a reminder to find all your favorite NBC Sports shows on Amazon Music. Just head to amazon.com/NBC Sports. Thanks again to Vaughn Dalzell for joining us. I'm Jay Croucher from me and Drew Dinsick. We'll see you soon.